Hi all, welcome to our session on visual storytelling. Today we have a very special guest, Christopher DeAndrea, an extremely talented motion graphics artist and entrepreneur. Christopher has worked with brands like Mercedes-Benz, Tiffany & Co., and Byredo. He'll be sharing his insights on how he begins a creative project, communicates a story through graphics, and his thoughts on the trajectory of AI.
Thank you so much, Andy, for inviting me to do this talk. I'm super excited to show you guys the work that I've been doing over the past few years. It's been an interesting journey, and I've learned a lot. And I'm hoping that you guys will be able to walk away from this talk and take away techniques and processes and hopefully ideas on how you approach your workflows, and hopefully impact your storytelling as well. So before we start, just a little bit about me. I started Reference in 2019 with the idea of creating a 3D motion graphics firm that imbued themes of design and storytelling into their work. I knew that I loved like commercial design and advertising. I previously worked at an ad firm called BBDO for 7 years, where I was the lead motion designer. So I sort of wanted to imbue the passion for advertising that I had and these beautiful aesthetics that I was seeing out in the world, and kind of like veer myself away from the traditional ad work and merge those two disciplines and create something unique. In addition to that, I was also at NYIT an adjunct professor for about a year. There, I taught architecture, senior architecture students, portfolio building and a little bit of rendering as well during that time. So today I'm going to just briefly take you through the structure of the studio, and our partners and how we work. I'm going to take you through about 5 different case studies. That'll be like the bulk of the presentation, and then some of the experimental work that the studio has been doing. And then we're going to end off on AI, because it kind of culminates like all the work that shows you all the work that we have in the presentation, and then it kind of leads us into maybe some of the Q&A stuff, because I know a lot of people are interested in that right now. So Reference. So we're a 3D technology art studio. We create environments, augmented reality, 3D experiences, and narrative-driven content. And I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty of what each of those things mean and specifically mean to us. Like I said, I founded the studio in 2019. It was just before COVID. I left my full-time job and I was like, hey, I want to do something different and I want to make a splash. So I took a leap of faith, and we're dedicated to providing clients with creative direction, motion design, CGI, and augmented reality services. And about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I met up with a company called General Idea. I think a few of them are on this call as well, but they're a larger agency, and they service high-end luxury clients with branding and marketing communications. We kind of met up and we were like, I think there's something really good here, because they had business leads in the category that we were trying to make a splash in. And at the same time, they were looking to kind of offer CGI and motion graphics as a package offering under their wing. So earlier this year, we completed an acquisition, and now Reference is a fully integrated department inside of General Idea Group. The way we typically work is that we receive a brief. All clients kind of have some kind of need. And they're either exposed to Reference through the parent agency, or they were exposed to Reference through Instagram or the website or word of mouth, something like that. They say that they have a seasonal marketing communication, a 30-second advertisement, a 3D billboard, augmented reality, some kind of thing that they want to make a splash. And maybe that's a large campaign on social media or something like that. We receive that brief from the client or from the parent agency. And then we get to work and we show them how we can bring the story to life. Sometimes the client will also provide storyboards, or they'll come to us and say, we know exactly what we want to make. Can you make it? So in that way, we're less creative and more just production. We really love the creative section, but of course, like we have a really, really strong creative arm, production arm rather. So this is kind of like a little glimpse at the structure of the studio. So it's myself and General Idea as partners of the studio. We're kind of working on the long-term strategy of the business and building out the business right now. We have a producer who's based in London. She helps us manage some of the talent that we have in different time zones. We have in-house designers and editors here in New York. Our office is based in Chelsea, and those individuals support our day-to-day needs and output. And then we have a network of freelancers and contractors that we work with all over the world. We work with people in the Philippines and London, Germany, Italy sometimes as well. So it's really starting to become a global network that Reference has. So yeah, I'm just going to jump right into it and get into some of the pieces that we recently completed. Let's see. So this one was for Tiffany. So Tiffany approached Reference and General Idea to create CGI short films for the new line of fragrances. So the Rose Gold Intense, which is the product that you see here. They wanted the films to feature the unique diamond facets of the bottle. The bottle itself has this really gorgeous design on the bottom that is reminiscent of the Tiffany Diamond branded language. And they also wanted to represent the scents, the actual fragrances themselves in some way. So we concepted for them a 30-second short film. And that was the final deliverable. That short film is live right now on their website. If you go to tiffany.com fragrances, you'll see that short film right now playing on their site. The content that we extracted from that short film was also for social media and for in-store LED screens. So really, when we're approached for a piece of content, that piece of content is usually not just a one-off and has like a one kind of like, oh, I saw this once on social media and I'm never seeing it again. The type of work that we try to strive for is really like, we are going to create a key piece of communication content. And then you can extract that, you as the client can extract that pieces from that content, and we can build social media, in-store, web assets as well. So you're really taking that content, investing in it, and then you're able to kind of integrate it into all your different marketing touch points. So the first thing we kind of do when we are approached with a project like this is we kind of take a look around. We do like a visual audit of what Tiffany's competitors are doing, in addition to what kind of like what inspires us in those worlds. We have here a lot of photography references, and then we also take kind of an audit of motion references as well that we want to imbue into the story. We know the fragrance is Rose Gold Intense, so can we create a narrative around Rose Gold Liquid? That's kind of immediately where our mind went. When we showcase those fragrances, I think one of them was Orange Flower. How are we showing those fragrances? How are we showing flowers in a way that hasn't really necessarily been done before? And how is all this going to be really unique? We take a look at liquids and a lot of motion that happens there. And we said, okay, I think we're kind of getting a visual understanding of what we want our 30-second film to look like. That's great. But then how do we translate those ideas into that 30-second narrative? So what you're looking at here is kind of a storyboard going from left to right. We start off with the bottle. We have like a visual detail of the bottle. We go into the bottle and we see the introduction of liquid. We have this beautiful orange flower blossoming moment. We have liquid kind of splashing against the edges of the bottle. We showcase the patchouli plant, which is another element. And then we're really like showcasing this like really precious, beautiful moments around the bottle to complete. And we have it sitting in that pool of rose gold liquid. So when you're kind of thinking about how you put the story together, you want to think about how those edits are happening. You want to think about those moments where you're hard cutting into one another. If there's music as well, that's a big consideration, because you want to be cutting and editing to that music. Each of these moments are so precious to the client, right? You really want to communicate to the client like, hey, we love this thing as much as you do, and we are going to showcase it in all of its full beauty, in addition to these elements that you have, these natural elements that you have inside of the fragrance. So we take these storyboards, which are really just mock-ups, and then we try to bring them into the 3D world. We work with the client directly to ensure that this is kind of a direction that they agree with, and that they feel that, they understand that what they're looking at is a low fidelity kind of way of thinking about the film. And then we kind of want to extract these and start working in 3D and seeing how we can recreate them ourselves. So the next step from the storyboard, traditionally we go into a gray box animatic. We take each of those items that you see in the storyboard, build them into their own scenes, and we turn them into these simulations, and we work with our artists to create all of the natural elements. There's a lot of liquid involved, so there's a lot of simulation that need to happen for this particular film to come together. When we have the gray box animatic and we're feeling good about it, the client's feeling pretty good about it so far, but then they want to see obviously the next step. How do we get to the rendering? How do we get to the beautiful things? When we're in tandem, when we're working on the gray box animatic, we'll go into the rendering portion and we'll start playing around with the different qualities of glass and different areas of light. How do reflections hit? How do all the refractions happen? What does it look like when the camera's inside of the bottle? These are all questions that really can only be answered through exploration. There are such beautiful and accidental moments that can happen just from like a creative exploration. Once you have the bottle in 3D and you're kind of moving the camera around, you're like, oh, wow, I never thought of that angle before. Sometimes that happens. And sometimes that's, those things will yield a better answer to that scene than what you had in mind originally. So like, for example, here we're looking top down at the neck of the bottle here. But then through exploration, we kind of found that this bottom up and looking up approach made the product feel more powerful, and gave that a better overall presence of the object. As I said, there was a lot of custom development made for these flowers. The flowers were very, very specific items the client had in mind. So we worked with a lot of photo references. We gave them to one of our artists, and he went ahead and recreated those flowers in 3D, fully blooming, fully rigged and everything, so that we can then take those flowers and do what we needed to with them, which was dip them in gold. So this is now, after we get to the storyboard, after the look development is done, we can finally get to the final rendering. So this is actually the result of the final. We didn't come here immediately. It was probably about a month of back and forth, maybe about 4 rounds of revisions before the client was actually happy with it. So this is the final. Yep. So that's the Tiffany project. So next we're going to get into Off-White. So Off-White approached us to create a 3D out-of-home billboard. So these are the really large billboards that you see in Times Square that are sort of curved on the edge of a street block. They kind of feature that fake they kind of feature the fake 3D effect. A lot of times we see things kind of popping out of those screens or made to feel like they're popping out of those screens. So Off-White said that they want to feature this shoe design called the out of office shoe design. And they said that the animations needed to also feature concepts behind the brand's latest seasonal campaign. And it also really needed to be celebratory of the late creative director, Virgil Abloh, who had passed just the year before. Because there was like this idea that Virgil had designed these shoes. He was always on the go. So that's why it was called the out of office shoe. He was always like on an airplane and kind of like texting people the input on the designs that he had. So we wanted to kind of play around with that theme in this work. The client was inspired by art installations, and themes of lines and graphical elements, optical illusions. They also provided us the idea of duplication and repetition. They also love the idea of adding like a blue rose and mirrors and utilizing that element in some way. They love these art installations by Kusama. This kind of feeling of infinity was a big moment for them. And so on the bottom here, we have an example of what these 3D out-of-home billboards look like. So it's a very interesting canvas to work with because you want something that's going to create this feeling of depth, and you want something that's going to really captivate the audience as well. So we were thinking about creating an infinite mirror room inside of one of these 3D out-of-home billboards. And we felt that that would be a really interesting way to showcase the product. And because, like I said, because these out-of-home billboards, typically these things are always jumping out at you. They're always trying to grab your attention in some way. And we kind of asked ourselves, can we turn that on its head? And can we create a space that sort of opened up inside of the billboard? Could we create the illusion of space going inside of the building instead of popping the shoe out at you? These are some examples of billboards that we really liked, that utilized the medium in a really thoughtful way, that was less about these things kind of popping out at you and more about an integration with the architecture. We like I said, we just really kind of respected these pieces differently than some of the more attention grabbing things. So we took visual inspiration from the Off-White world and their store design, installations from Terrell and the idea of creating a portal or a skylight. And then when showcasing the shoe, we wanted to show it very graphically. We wanted to show this blue and white balance inside of the mirror room. So finally, the client gives us the shoe. And what you're looking at here is actually a 3D scan. So these are renders that are done in 3D. We took the shoe and we gave it to our 3D scanning partner, and they gave it back to us, and they provided the model and the textures. And then we had to recreate the laces in CGI, and we had to recreate all the materials and the lighting inside of CGI as well. So once we finally got that stuff back from our vendor, we had a lot of fun just kind of photographing the shoe in a different way. Photographing, I use in quotes because it's rendering, but it feels like photography in some way. It feels like I'm literally just holding the shoe in my hand and I'm able to take pictures with it, but it's all done in CGI. This was one of our earlier storyboards that we presented to the client. We had like an idea of using 3D printing. But I just kind of wanted to throw this in there to show you guys that not every concept that we present to the client is picked. Obviously, we kind of go through this back and forth process. I think we presented, maybe somewhere between 3 and 4 different concepts before we finally aligned on the infinite mirror room. So this is the final product. This is the full output animation, meaning that this is not inside of the 3D billboard yet. It's really just what does the animation look like on its own, completely without any additional context. The shoe kind of comes to life and starts spinning, and the room starts to spin as well from the movement of the shoe. And we're just really treated to this gorgeous visual of the product and a nice payoff with the logo at the end. And this is live capture film. So we went down to Times Square when it was live, and we were able to capture it here. It was really awesome seeing it in its full glory in 3D. So this was one of 3 major activations, one in Times Square. There was one in Hong Kong, and there was one in Korea as well. This is the one in Hong Kong. So each billboard has its different dimensions, and we have to kind of prepare the animation to work within all those different dimensions. But in total, I think there was something about 40 to 50 different activations for this one piece of creative. I think at some point they even played it in movie theaters, which was interesting in China. So that was pretty cool. That was a first for us. So that was that project, and now we're going to go into 71 Gin. So late last year, the studio was approached by a brand called 71. It's a new liquor brand. This is a very premium product. I think the price point for this is $170, $160 a bottle, something along those lines. So the client really had a very specific idea that they wanted to achieve with this product. They wanted to showcase the beautiful facets of the bottle design, and then they also really wanted to showcase the golden liquid, because that was somewhat unique for a gin brand. And they wanted the story to just highlight the merger and this like poetic dance that happened between the liquid and the bottle itself. So like we start all our projects, we kind of take that idea and we go into this world of references, and we pull all references of work that we really love, that inspire us in the spirit world, or in this case in the perfume world, because the bottle's design, even though it's a spirit, it was actually inspired by a perfume bottle. So we look at these. This is all photography. This is stuff that we've pulled as references before we go into our CGI world. We look at all this photography work and we say, wow, look at how the photographers treat the product. Look at how these gradients in the backdrops are made. Look at how the liquid looks. And we kind of take note of that before we head into the CGI world, because we know that these elements and this quality of the glass needs to all come through, because there aren't many elements in these films. It's really just liquid, glass, and background. So that means that you have to be very, very particular when you're showcasing these things, and they need to look really, really real. Again, these are photography references, but we liked looking at how the liquid moved throughout the bottle, and in this Chanel reference here. And we loved seeing how the shadows on the left kind of really emphasize the contrast and the shape and the form of the bottle. We looked at different references for CGI liquid. Doing liquids in CGI, as I mentioned before, it's quite time consuming. We need several people and several artists working on these things in order to pull off liquids in a way that actually looks to a fidelity of photography. And then we're also just kind of looking at how the logo treatment is made in this example here. So we take those references and we take the idea that the client has given to us and we lay it out into a storyboard. This film was actually only vertical instead of horizontal, so that's why all the boards are 9 by 16 here. We broke it down into acts and we said, okay, from the progression to the end of the film, we know we're doing a 30-second spot. We're going to kind of imagine how the liquid and the bottle are coming to life. These are all, again, just references, and we took them into Photoshop to kind of help the client understand and see how the world is going to be painted and visualized. Once we have those references, the client signs off on that storyboard. They love the direction. So now it's time to get into the simulation process. So what you're looking at is this process of playing around with all these different means of introducing liquid into the scene. What does it look like when the liquid is poured into the bottle? What does it look like when it's splashed from bottom to top? How does it look on the corner? There are a lot of different things that can go wrong. And when you're doing simulations, it's really just trial and error. There is no one size fits all answer. And again, these things they're quite time consuming. One simulation can take 3 or 4 hours to make, and then if it doesn't work out, you gotta change your settings and you gotta render it again. So, like I said, I think what we learned from this project is that the best way to handle liquid simulations is to have multiple artists in tandem working on one problem, instead of just having one artist that's handling all of the liquid. I think we actually ended up utilizing 3 different artists to get to the final product for this one. And this is the final, and then I have a few other outputs, so I will play this for you. So that was the full film. We also created alternative edits where we had a few additional extra scenes and shots. The client wanted a 30-second, a 20-second, and a 6-second, all for different social media aspects. And then one final deliverable, which is this point of sale. So the client specifically wanted something that was going to live on LED screens in different stores and liquor stores and stuff like that. So we created this black and white duo animation for that. And these are just some like close-up macro detail stills that we took of the liquid in the bottle because we wanted to showcase these. Again, these simulations were super unique, and creating the glass and the liquid like this for us was a first. So because of this project is what led us into the Tiffany project. We were able to showcase our capability of creating liquids and glass so well that Tiffany hired us simply because of this case study. Okay, I have 2 more. We have Byredo and Mercedes. Okay, so Byredo approached us to create a short film for this lipstick. It's a super unique lipstick design where it has this curved body and it has this duotone gold and silver. The there's a very, very specific, like step-by-step process that the client wanted to showcase for the film. It was a 30-second deliverable, again, that they wanted us to produce. They like the spirit of how it's made, those videos that you see on TV. So there was this bending and hammering process to create the tube, a cut and carve, sort of like on a lathe. And then there's also this vacuum form finish that you have on the gold cap. And then finally, they said that they wanted to kind of see the lipstick product all come together. So these are the processes. We kind of sit and look at them and say, okay, how can we showcase these processes in CGI and make it beautiful? We start with a different mood board for each one. Again, picking up visual references, both motion references and just graphic references into these boards. So this is just a board that we wanted to reference for the bending process, the carving, the lathe. How are we going to showcase that? Can it be a very symmetrical shot? Does it need to be something where we see all the shavings kind of coming off of the metal? When we showcase the finish and the vacuum form, how are we going to do that? How are we going to essentially photograph how that process is happening? Is the vacuum form, are we looking down over the vacuum form mold, or are we looking at the object before it gets vacuum formed? And then finally, when we have that reveal, we look at how the client has showcased their products in the past. This one on the left here is lipstick that they've already released without that curved body. And we really love these like sleek and sexy references that we feel would kind of showcase the curvature of the bottle. Okay. So then we take those boards and we go into the look development process. What you're seeing here is the process of rendering different aspects, rendering out the lathe, rendering out these mechanical machine arms. We custom built all of these little pieces. Sometimes we're purchasing 3D models online, and then we're retexturing and reskinning them and then repurposing them. I think for the robot arms, like we bought one robot arm and then we bought one claw and we kind of put them together and it created a whole new robot, which is exactly what we needed, because sometimes you can't get always exactly what you need. And then on the bottom there, you see some of the vacuum form experimentations before we got into the final. This was the final approved storyboard before we moved into rendering. The idea is that the piece of metal is sort of taken and extracted out of this canister in some way. The robot arms are picking up that canister and they're putting it onto a device that then bends the metal. The bent metal is on a lathe and it's cut down. We have the cap that has the vacuum form moment, and then finally we see the lipstick come together, the final product. And then finally, we're on the Mercedes work. Okay. So the goal is to create, this is actually a self-initiated project. So this was about 3-4 months ago. We said, oh, wow, we haven't done any automotive work before. And I'd really love to showcase automotive as a capability of the company. So we said to ourselves, can we just create a short 20 to 30-second film around the Mercedes EQS? It's an all electric vehicle. And can we create like sort of a light narrative that pushes forward the studio's design capabilities and showcases just our ability to just really highlight the product beautifully. So we take a look at other work that Mercedes has done in the past, particularly in photography. We really love these close-up macro photography shots. And we said, maybe we can take cues from this world and bring that into our Mercedes EQS world. Other automotive clients, they kind of, in this photography, they're kind of abstracting things so much that you're not quite sure what you're looking at. And we feel that that's that's really beautiful. That's kind of interesting. Typically when you see things in commercials, you're treated to a full view and you know exactly what you're looking at. But sometimes it's exciting to see a little bit of mystery. And then when we had the idea that we would kind of progress throughout the film through these abstract crops, and then we would finally get to a moment where we have a payoff and we reveal the full product as a silhouette. When speaking about color and light, we love this dark blue, pale blue world, and these really orange highlights to kind of talk about the ideas of light and sunlight and electricity. We wanted to mimic the natural like sunlight and rhythms of the sun. As you're kind of like driving, you have that feeling that light's like passing through the cabin of the vehicle. And then there's this idea of just a silhouette against the skyline. We found these references from Rimowa, and we said that these are really, really nice and gentle, and we felt like it could be really cool to showcase the product with this kind of light movement. So we take those ideas, put them into a storyboard. This is just using references as a storyboard instead of going ahead and designing a gray box. Because this is a self-initiated project, we wanted to kind of do it fairly rapidly. So we took this storyboard, we gave it to one of our artists and said, and we downloaded the model online and we said, okay, have fun and kind of go do your thing and explore this world. So we iterated back and forth between myself and the artist, and then we ended up with the final film. I'm going to kind of skip through some of this stuff because I would rather get to the AI work. And I know we're already at 5:15 or so. So that's cool, right? Like we're really like, we get an idea and an understanding of how we tell stories through CGI. What is coming next? What's on the horizon? And of course, the answer that I feel, that my partners feel, will be some world of AI. AI is not particularly coming for your job. I think I should reiterate that, but it is coming for certain processes, and that should free up time for your artists. That should free up time for other creative tasks. I think that, and I'll get into it, that the relationship that we will have with AI and efficiencies around AI is that we're going to be able to spend more time and thought into the upfront and the creative, and the story that we want to tell, versus worrying so much about all the production that comes as a part of that. So from all of these case studies that I showed you guys, we can kind of extrapolate that the typical process is that we're given a brief, we are looking at art direction, and then we tell our artists, okay, go ahead and now execute on that art direction and help us tell one snippet of that story, or help us visualize how that story is going to be told. And there's obviously a lot that goes into just this process. I'm really kind of truncating it here between just art direction and output. There's so many in between moments. But if you take this idea and you apply that to AI, you can get something like this, where you can take your references. Let's say that you want to create a flower. And for example, think back to the Tiffany flowers that I showed you guys. Those flowers were, they took weeks to produce. They took a lot of time to, from one single artist to be able to produce the blooming of the flower and reproduce the exact details of the orange flower, because we were looking for that. And as AI progresses, we'll get more detailed and we'll get more precise. But it's kind of interesting right now to take the same principle and take your references of what you like and what you want your final output to look like, combine that with the text prompt of your own direction, and then you can get an output similar to what you see on the right here. There's a way to do this in products like Midjourney right now, in Stable Diffusion. You can upload as many images as you want, and combine them with your text prompts. And all of a sudden, you're able to now art direct Midjourney into a way that you wouldn't just be able to get from just pure text prompts. It's a very interesting way to work that I'm sort of exploring right now in tandem with all the work at the studio. So like I said, those flowers took a week and a half to make, but with this idea, this process that I just showed you, I'm able to create all of these images in less than an hour. I'm able to kind of like go into the prompt and refine it and say, I want a blue background. I want a black background. I want this type of lighting. I want softer lighting. I want harsh lighting. I want droplets of water. And like iteratively, like within an hour, I'm able to do this within Midjourney. Now, this isn't, of course, good for a final product because we can't animate it. It's not exactly an orange flower. It's not exactly what the client's looking for. I still have to make edits, and I really can't edit it right now. There's a lot of limitations with Midjourney, but you can kind of take this and you can at least show the client, hey, is this a direction that you like before you get into the nitty gritty work? Because you want to make sure that the client kind of signs off on that direction. Finding references takes a really long time, but kind of promising the client that we're going to create a beautiful flower and then not seeing what it's going to look like or have any idea of what it's going to look like until we get to the final is a really hard promise to make sometimes. So we're exploring different ways of putting visualization up front into that process and hopefully saving us some time in the future. This is kind of an idea of where things are heading. Right now, you can take that final output that you had from Midjourney on the left, and you can put it into a product called Runway ML, and it will render out a 4-second clip for you. And again, this only takes a minute to make. This isn't something that takes a long time, but it's not always looking good. You can't necessarily say, I want the petals to bloom in this direction, or I want the lighting to move while the petals are blooming. So it still makes the process unreliable. However, I will say that over time, within another 2 years, maybe we'll be able to actually direct those things and we'll get iteratively better and better results from AI. These are a few like these are just great examples of flowers. These are a few other things that I've produced just in my spare time, trying to understand how AI works, trying to understand how to control lighting and different elements, again, through this method of providing an art direction plus text prompt output equals something beautiful and unique. With that said, there are a few efficiencies that we've already taken into account for in the studio this year. We up-res our post processes. So we have a 1080p output for the Tiffany work, but we're actually able to up-res it to 4K. That saves a ton of render time right there. That's with a product called Topaz, Topaz, if you want to look into it. You're also able to take 30 frame per second outputs and up-res it to 60 frames per second or even 120 frames per second with AI through Topaz. We actually used that for the 71 Gin project. Quick concepts. So in Tiffany, we did actually provide like really quickly some flowers that were dipped in orange and metal and kind of like showed that to the client, was like, is this a good direction or not? And they were able to say yes or no very quickly. That was something from Midjourney. And then finally, you can use a Midjourney output as a single static image, but the client doesn't have any copyrights to it. The rights right now in the United States, they can't own it. They can use the image in their commercial work, but they actually don't own it. And theoretically, nobody owns it right now. I think that this stuff will kind of get ironed out. I know that Getty Images is working on something that if you work directly within their platform, they're able to guarantee that there's no copyright issues. So just 5 key takeaways before I finish up. So the best stories are captivating, visualize concepts beautifully. The medium will become more immersive as time progresses. Right now, we're creating videos for everything, but I think 5 years from now, we're going to be creating 3D videos and augmented reality immersive experiences. AI-generated content is going to consume the market in the coming years. I feel like the speed in which you're able to actually create work with AI, as that fidelity increases, we will probably see a flood of that work, and we won't actually be able to discern the difference between AI photography and CGI. And then we'll, how do we kind of make sure the work kind of still stands out? I feel personally that thoughtful stories will always stand out amongst the noise. So the more time that you put into your conceptualizing, the more time you put into answering your brief, it's going to help that work stand out. And my last bit is, try not to offload all of your thinking to artificial intelligence, because the less it will be your work. If you just tell ChatGPT to come up with 10 ideas and then you tell Midjourney to visualize those ideas, you didn't do anything. You really just told the computer to do something. That's my opinion. Maybe it's going to help answer a few client briefs, but I don't believe that it's going to create the impact that you want the work to have, at least not for a very, very long time. So that is everything. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, so let's open it up for questions and a Q&A. Any thoughts for Chris?
I had one question about your soundtracks that are associated with these. How are you doing those? The kind of sound.
So we've worked with a vendor, a third-party vendor, just a sound designer. We provide them the storyboards. They will come up with initial soundscapes, and then we start editing to those soundscapes, and we kind of like in tandem work at the same time to complete those. So we have that designer, but then we also, our in-house editor also have sound design capabilities. So I'm actually able to just really quickly give him feedback and tell him kind of what I visualize in my mind for sound design.
I have a question. So you do a lot of like great close-up macro shots and really creative stuff. Do you ever have a hard time convincing the client like this is the direction to go to, instead of just like really big shots, just revealing everything immediately?
Yes, I think so. The Tiffany project was one of those, because we didn't necessarily intend to show the bottle immediately. And we wanted to really just kind of tease the idea of what we're getting into, more like the Byredo product, where you're not quite sure what you're looking at until you have that payoff at the end. In this particular case, it really depends on your touch points. Where is your viewer actually looking at this end piece of content? Is it in a store? Is it on a billboard? Is it in a space where I don't have a lot of time to get this person's attention? If that's the case, then you need to reveal the product immediately. If you don't have the time or the luxury to really like take your time and show this beautiful story, you gotta get the product nailed into the consumer's mind immediately. So that's okay. It's our job to still make it look beautiful and intriguing. Yeah.
I've got one more. Where do you typically spend most of your time on a project? Is it the storyboarding? Is it the actual 3D, the post-production? What do you think the split is there?
So right now it's probably about 1/3 upfront concepting, and then 2/3 creating the actual production of the 3D elements that you see. It's, I think maybe I can use the Off-White project as an example. I think we did 2 to 3 weeks of upfront working with the client back and forth, making sure that the storyboards are good, that they really like the direction before we kicked off production. Then it was about 4 weeks of production to create the film, get the product scanned, and create all of the exports for the 3D billboard. And then we had maybe 1 week of post-production where we refined the lighting and the coloration and finalized all of those exports. Yeah. So a lot of time is still being spent in that hardcore 3D production process, making sure all the materials and the lighting is working well. I think that, like I said, with time, AI will probably make that process faster.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like what you were showing with the flower, I could see like timeline definitely shrinking once you have a little more control over the AI output.
Right. Exactly.
When you're doing initial concept, like, what do you think is the breakdown in terms of like trying to find references from other products or from other motion graphics designers versus trying to find inspiration like in a completely different medium for you? Like, especially at the very early stages, like what's helpful for you to start building a story? Because I think a lot of the times when you're looking at 10 to 30 seconds of video, you only have so much to kind of like grab a client or a consumer's attention. So if you're trying to make a very unique 10 to 30-second film, like are you mostly referencing others because you know it works, or are you more referencing like, things outside, maybe in a different practice altogether?
I think we do about 50-50, where we'll try to take, like I said, an audit and an understanding of where the client's been before, what their competition is doing, and what are like the most beautiful references in that world. And then we try to look at areas of discipline outside of where the client is working. Maybe we can take a reference from film. I think like for the Off-White thing, I referenced something from Star Wars, to put into that. So like there are a lot of other worlds, and it depends on what your artists are exposed to, where they find their inspiration from, because they're going to pull something from their mind, like, I remember such and such from Star Wars. I can put that in there, and I can apply that to this idea, to this concept, because I think it's really cool. So we try to have a healthy mix, but we have a healthy mix. We try to be respectful of where the client has been in the past, and then we try to find an area all in between that has never been done before. What can we do that hasn't been done, and can we take ideas from this world, that world, and combine them and create a totally unique art direction or a totally unique story?
Anything else? All right, cool. Well, thanks so much, Chris. This was awesome and super inspirational.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, round of applause again, Chris. Thank you so much.